Hu Lin was a little slave girl, sold by her own father before she could remember. She lived on a wretched houseboat with other children her cruel master had bought, sent into the streets each day to beg. She longed to watch the great kites drifting like birds, to see the magpies building their nests in the poplars. But idling earned her only beatings and an empty stomach. The children called her Master Blackheart, and the name fit him like a glove. Early one morning, desperate and heartsick, Hu Lin tried to run away. She had not gone 100 yards before she saw him following. He caught her, scolded her dreadfully, and beat her so savagely that she lay on the ground for hours, too faint to stir, wishing someone would save her. Not far from the river lived an old man in a tumble-down shanty, and his only companion was a goose named Chong who guarded the gate at night and squawked at strangers. Hu Lin and this wise fowl were close friends. She often stopped to chat with him on her way past the cottage, and through their strange friendship, she learned that the old man was a miser who hoarded money in his yard. One morning, hungry Chong slipped into the house at daybreak hunting for scraps. The bedroom door had blown open in the night, and there lay a young man, fast asleep, not the graybeard he knew as master. Before the goose's astonished eyes, the youth shifted suddenly back into the shape of an old man. Trembling with excitement, Chong rushed into the yard to puzzle over the mystery. Chong thought at once of Hu Lin and her cleverness. Slipping out through the gate his master had left ajar, he hurried toward the river where the houseboats lined the wharf. There on the sand lay the familiar small form. He called to her softly, and she turned a tear-stained face toward her friend. Putting his bill close to her ear, the goose whispered his extraordinary discovery. Hu Lin forgot her own misery listening to this tale. She asked whether anyone else could have spent the night, but Chong was certain his master had no friends. Then the child announced wisely that the old man must be a fairy in disguise. The goose had never heard such a word, and Hu Lin laughed at his ignorance before lowering her voice to a whisper and explaining, while Chong nodded violently, speechless with amazement. Chong coaxed her to come and meet this fairy, promising he could save her from all her troubles. Hu Lin wondered if she dared, glancing fearfully toward the houseboat where Blackheart lay snoring. But the goose insisted, and so the two friends hurried to the miser's compound, hearts pounding. The gate stood partly open, and they entered boldly, seeking the old man in his vegetable patch. The garden was empty. They crept into the house and found every room deserted, marveling at the miser's simple brick bed with its small fire hole. Then the gate slammed, and the bar dropped into place. They were trapped. Chong trembled, and Hu Lin began to cry, dreading another beating. The goose guided her into a dark corner behind baskets, and there they crouched silent as the miser's footsteps approached the door. To their relief, the miser passed his bedroom and went straight to the garden. All that day, the two companions stayed hidden, growing less afraid as hours passed. Hu Lin decided this miser could not be so terrible as Blackheart. When darkness fell over the land, girl and goose fell fast asleep in their corner, knowing nothing more of what happened around them through the night. At first light, Hu Lin woke with a start, unsure where she was. Chong stared with wide, frightened eyes. On the bed lay no miser, but a young man whose hair was black as a raven's wing, a faint smile on his handsome face as though he dreamed of something wonderful. A cry of wonder escaped Hu Lin before she could stop it. The sleeper's eyes opened instantly and fixed upon her. The young man was as astonished as his guests. He demanded to know what this meant, but Chong answered with a question of his own, asking what he had done with his master. The man laughed and claimed to be the master himself. When they insisted he was young and handsome, not old and ugly, his face lit with sudden joy. At last, he cried, he was free from all his troubles. He offered to tell them his story. His father was a rich man in a distant county who had given him everything he wished since childhood. His tutor often warned him that the gods were more powerful than men and that he must never anger the spirits. The boy only laughed, claiming his wealth could buy the favor of gods and fairies alike, while the good tutor shook his head and begged him to beware. One day, grown bolder than ever, the youth mocked his tutor's warnings about the spirit dwelling in his father's well. He sneered that he cared nothing for such rules, and, before the tutor could stop him, leaped across the well's mouth. The instant his feet touched ground, his body shrank and withered, his skin turned yellow and wrinkled, his pigtail grew thin and white. He had become an old man. His father burned incense at a dozen temples and prayed to countless gods, but nothing restored his son's youth. At last, a famous fortune-teller declared that the well spirit's punishment was to make him a miser, young only in sleep. The cure was a riddle so senseless it seemed hopeless. If while he slept in his true shape, a mad goose came leading a tiger forest out of slavery, the charm would break. The young man clapped his hands, suddenly understanding. He had named the goose Chong, meaning mad, making him the mad goose. And the child's name, Hulin, meant tiger forest, for who is tiger and Lin a grove of trees? Since she was a slave girl, the goose had truly led a tiger forest out of slavery. The impossible riddle had solved itself that very morning, and the evil spirit's hold was broken forever. Just then Black Heart came banging at the gate, but the grateful young man soothed Hulin's fears and bought her freedom for a generous price. She bowed low and touched her head to the floor 9 times, weeping with happiness. He promised she would never beg or fear a beating again, and that when